Welcome to this webinar where we will be talking about our latest innovation in the logistics and supply chain space called WeArt. Before we start, a couple of housekeeping rules that we want to quickly go through with you. First of all, this webinar is being recorded, and afterwards it will be publicly made available. Your microphones are muted during the entire webinar. If you have a question, if something is unclear, if there's anything that you would like to ask throughout the webinar, there is a questions section in the webinar tool, where you can post your questions. Patrick and I, we can see your questions, and then towards the end of the webinar, we will go through those questions and have them answered. All right. Without further ado, let's get going and let's get started. As I said, an exciting topic that we have for today, talking about our latest innovation in the logistics and supply chain space, which is called WeArt, which is basically an end-to-end yard management tool that is based on SAP technology in order to digitize your yard processes and help our customers to become more efficient and better in their entire logistics execution operation. So very quickly, short introduction from our side. My name is Michael Augustin. I'm the Managing Partner and Global Director for our yacht practice here at Westernacher. So basically overseeing anything that has to do with yard implementations, whether it's projects, our innovation portfolio, so anything that goes into that direction is basically under my responsibility. And with me today, I have my colleague Patrick. So Pat, maybe quick introduction from your side.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. As said previously, my name is Pat Sogard, and I've been with Westernacher working within our US-based yard logistics practice on all things yard management for almost 4 years. And prior to that, and inclusive of this time, I've been involved with the greater supply chain world for almost the better part of a decade now.
All right, perfect. So very good. Let's get started. Before we go into WeArt and look into WeArt, quick introduction of who we are, who's Westernacher Consulting, what is it that we do. So we're a leading company in digital supply chain transformations and also business transformations using SAP technology. We like to call ourselves global yet local. So we have 1,200 people spread across the world in our regions, in our countries of presence, that help our customers locally on the ground with implementations of SAP in the digital supply chain space, whether it's warehousing, transportation, supply chain planning, yard topics. But also, as I've already mentioned, we also do consult our customers on the right digital strategy, on business process excellence, on enterprise and application architecture when it comes to transforming towards S4. One thing that I always like to highlight about us is we are 100% employee owned, which means we do not belong to a bigger company. We are completely self-sufficient. The shares of our company are spread amongst our partners that are actively working for our company, which makes our flexibility in terms of investments, innovations. We are just much more flexible in that direction. All right, so let's jump into the topic of digitized yard management. And I will first of all introduce that topic with a different topic, which at the end of the day, hopefully will make sense for all of you. Because what we definitely see in the market is that yard management as a topic is still something which is a little bit left outside. So a lot of companies do look into warehousing, they do look into transportation, also into supply chain planning, but the yard is still a topic which is a little bit left behind. However, as everywhere else in life, even if you have just a minor problem along a chain of different topics, if that minor problem is not being addressed, it can have severe consequences. And the comparison that I would like to make is talking a little bit about sleep deprivation here. So I think we all know the feeling of not getting enough sleep, of just having slept a couple of hours, maybe not having the best sleep quality. And in some of the economies, some of the biggest economies in the world, this is really starting to get a massive problem, although it's something which is not really visible to many, but the estimated cost of sleep deprivation across some of the biggest economies in the world, so US, UK, Germany, Japan, and Canada, is 680 billion US dollars. Yeah, so you see that there is, even if we are looking at a smaller topic here, it can have a huge economical impact. So if we compare sleep with manual yard operations, which most of the customers we are talking about or talking to still have, we see the same pattern. We see the same problems. So if you don't sleep enough, or if you're running your yard manually, in the end of the day, it comes down that you're slow, you're inefficient, you're error prone, and you're reactive. And I like to quote one of our customers that we have recently talked to, because they said something which I really liked, and I think which also describes the problem pretty well. When we were talking about their yard processes, about their operations, what they do today, they basically said, listen, the way we work is we are still stuck in the 1950s. So, and that's unfortunately the reality for a lot of our customers that still run yard operations on either very outdated systems. They run them on Excel spreadsheets, on pieces of paper with handwritten notes on them. This is basically the reality still with a lot of customers and a lot of yards in the world, and leads to, as I've already said, these four factors. So if we then talk a little bit about the impact, and again talking a little bit about sleep deprivation first before we then build the bridge towards the yard processes. So as I've said, right, a topic as small, as hidden as this can lead to big impacts, whether it's impacting your health, whether it's impacting your sleep duration. You have more accidents. In the end of the day, you see that if you don't keep track and if you don't pay attention to getting enough sleep, to make sure that your sleep quality is also good, in the end of the day, this will down the line have some impacts on the way you as a human being are operating, and the way you as a human being basically are performing in your day. Looking a little bit now again into the yard management topic, it's actually the same way. So the manual outdated yard process that we still see a lot of times today, in the end of the day, results into business challenges that are the same across basically all the industries that we are serving. Yeah? Manual processes lead to no visibility, no accuracy, no transparency on the other side. So basically, you're completely blind when it comes to your operations. You're very inefficient. You're prone to making things wrong. There is little to probably no communication amongst key stakeholders in the process. So if we are talking about a distribution yard or a production yard, where I have a number of warehouse doors and trailers that are parked in the yard, typically we see 3 to 5 people that are being involved. Yeah, we have the driver on the external side, we have the shunter, internally we have the people in the warehouse, we have maybe someone in the warehouse control center. If we are talking about gate operations, we have people sitting at the gate in order to check in and check out drivers. So you see, there's already, even with a smaller process like a yard management process, there are already a couple of stakeholders being involved, and it's very crucial that these people are communicating well, and that we are not losing communication and information throughout the process. And one thing that's of course something that we always address is you as a shipper. If you are shipping your product to a customer, or if you are shipping or if you're distributing your products into stores or whatever, in the end of the day, we always do all of this in order to meet certain customer expectations towards the end. So if we ship directly to our customers expect on-time delivery, certain updates nowadays with all the technology that comes out. And that's, in the end of the day, what our main aim is, to improve our own service levels towards our end customer. And it also starts in the yard. When we talk about things like we open a trailer, we see, for example, that in an inbound process something got damaged, or in an outbound process, just make sure and documenting that everything has been loaded in the correct way before we set this out to the customer. Always proactively updating customers about ETAs of their shipments. So those are the little things that also have significant impact on the greater picture. So talking a little bit about digital yard operations and what it can basically do in order to wake up your operations. So we talked about higher customer service already. Obviously, looking at the majority of our customers, they're there's not just one side, there are multiple sides. Standardizing the processes across different locations also gives a huge benefit, especially for a central team that manages the processes, that also is then being able to benchmark much better versus everyone basically doing whatever they feel is right. And of course, the two biggest levers are increased process efficiency as well as increased accuracy and transparency. So process efficiency translates into either less time spent per truck or trailer that I'm handling in the yard, or I can even increase my utilization in the yard, and with that, basically handle more trucks in an hour, more trailers in an hour, and the accuracy and transparency topic, as I've mentioned earlier, it's about not flying blind again. It's about knowing what's exactly happening in the yard. It's about very easy topics like knowing where the trailer is in the yard and how long it's been in the yard and what's been loaded or what's the previous cargo, for example, on that trailer. But obviously, it also goes as advanced as talking about GPS location tracking and making sure that from an accuracy perspective, we track every asset that is on the yard at the right point in time at the right location. Talking a little bit about enhanced safety and sustainability, obviously this is also becoming a topic. The more streamlined operations in the yard are, the more efficient they are, the greater the safety enhancement in the end of the day will be. If we, for example, don't have drivers that are just blindly driving around, just searching for something rather than telling them where to go. Obviously, also has an impact on safety of own personnel. And from a sustainability perspective, talking about truck and trailer movements inside the yard, if we can basically eliminate trailer movements, that obviously has an impact on the efficiency overall, but also on the sustainability, as those trucks nowadays still are mostly powered by diesel engines. And again, why should we do this? So why should you digitize your yard and revitalize your yard to wake up your operations? In the end of the day, we are expecting some cost reduction. Yeah? So this comes in reduction of charges. So charges for loading or unloading operations that are exceeding the agreed time. So most of the times most customers have 45 or 60 minutes in order to handle a truck. So staying in that threshold is one thing, but then also talking about trailers that are being in the yard and having the free time in the yard in order to reload those trailers. So making sure that we are not exceeding that time and that we are not running into demurrage and detention charges for any trailers, containers that are in the yard. Below there, you see a couple of benchmarks a couple of KPIs that we see in our projects that we have implemented so far. In terms of the value realization. So we are talking about 30% increase in efficiency and productivity. So that's, as I've said, more trucks that I can handle, or being able to handle the same amount of trucks in less time, basically. Faster gate in and gate out operations. So whether it's having a physical gatehouse with someone sitting there, or whether it's drivers that are just going in the yard and then registering physically somewhere else, but just speeding up the entire arrival and departure process by, for example, implementing self-check-in processes. And then at the end of the day, talking about the cost reduction, that's of course a number that is highly dependent on every site, every customer, every cost structure that we are looking at. But we are typically seeing $250,000 a year in terms of cost reduction per site. And then, of course, up to 50% reduction in fuel consumption for internal truck drivers, for internal shunting trucks, because we are eliminating a lot of unnecessary movements in the yard. All right, good. We've already talked a little bit about yard management. Now let's talk about WeYard and what WeYard is able to do, which, as I've already said in the introduction, is our own SAP-based end-to-end yard management product that we are launching right now. At the end of the day, it addresses all the points that I have been talking about from a process and overall business perspective. So it gives you real-time visibility and efficiency. Gives you a lot of possibilities to report on statuses on the current situation in the yard. It is completely built as a mobile application, and you will see this in the demo that we have prepared for today. Yes, the demo will be from a desktop PC still, but the way WeYard has been built is that it works on any tablet, on any phone, or whatever we have in the yard. simple reason for that is that from an operations perspective, if we talk about yard operations, in the majority of the cases, it's not like I'm sitting in front of a laptop or a PC and basically I'm executing a process. These things all happen outside in the field, where people on a shunting truck need something in order to confirm a movement from A to B, or we need other mobile scenarios, which is why Weart has been completely built on mobile technologies. It's fast and scalable, so that's something which, of course, as I've already said, for customers having more than just one site that they are looking for in terms of a yard management implementation, it can be deployed very fast, reaching ROI quite quickly, without a lot of overhead on the IT or even business side. And given the fact that it is an SAP solution, and that it is based on SAP technology, it perfectly fits in and blends into existing SAP processes. If our customers, for example, already have ECC or S4, if they already have TM or EWM, it fits in perfectly. And just to be very clear, it's not an official SAP product. Weart is a Westernacher product built on SAP technology. Those are the results that we have already talked about. So just summarizing basically what we are seeing in our projects, I will quickly skip through this as we've already talked about this, and hand over to Patrick, who's going to quickly introduce Weart from a business capability perspective, and then will walk us through a demo of Weart and will show us an end-to-end process of a truck that is basically visiting our yard. Okay, Patrick, over to you.
Thank you, Michael. Hi again, everyone. So yeah, Weart, as previously mentioned, it's designed by Westernacher on SAP technology. And what we designed it around is to consider three main building blocks of yard management systems. So yard planning, gate operations, and finally yard execution, which is what happens when the vehicle arrives at the yard for loading, unloading, dropping hooks, etc. And so what the yard management system should grant you is that visibility into what is going to happen. That's by virtue of the yard planning. Then should streamline your gate operations, whether it be through self-check-in or through gate agents, needing to process those trucks that are arriving and departing your yard. And then finally, should standardize and streamline, again, your processes that you must take during the vehicle's time that it visits your yard. So Weart is capable of being integrated with several key supply chain systems like transportation management, EWM, and then of course ECC and S4 if TM or EWM are not in place. And this is that fundamental component to the planning building block that I mentioned earlier, in the sense that having that integration to an upstream system grants us that ability to have visibility into what we can expect to be happening at our yard prior to it showing up at our doorstep. So for those of you that are familiar with SAP's Fiori user interface as kind of their primary front-end interface, then you'll feel right at home with Weart, since it enables you to continue utilizing your Fiori Launchpad, just as you might be doing today, or as your users might be doing today, as your central way of interfacing with all of your SAP systems that may be relevant to a given persona within your business. So to them, it'll feel no different than what they're currently doing if Fiori is already in use today. So it's only a couple of tiles, so it's not going to add a whole lot of clutter to their Launchpad, and it still grants all those capabilities that you would expect of a modern day yard management system. I think we can proceed forward with the demo. All right, so getting right in here. So like I said, just 4 main tiles, and then this enables you to plan, monitor, and execute your yard operations. So diving right into a live loading scenario. I think it keeps muting me. Okay, so if I'm the gate agent, we're usually going to kick off the check-in process by asking the driver for a reference number. So in this case, when we did a partial search for that reference number, we see a couple different visits that are already active in the yard, and we can see that there are a couple different statuses. Additionally, as a result of the integration, we went from 5 visits to 6 visits. When kind of off screen, we sent a new shipment over from ECC. These processing statuses can be customized to match your terminology of your operations and can differ from scenario to scenario. So once we have the visit that the driver in front of us has come in to do, we can go ahead and proceed from this overview screen with initiating the check-in by first assigning the vehicle. So we're going to take, in this case, the license plate number of that truck that's in front of us, provide that to the system, and then process that check-in action from the overview screen. And then by clicking next in the bottom right, it takes us to our detailed view of this visit, where we can input some information that wasn't known at the time of the upstream system sending the shipment information, which created this visit. So we're going to supply that driver information, confirm the subcontractor, and if needed, add things like badges or PIN numbers. And then finally, we're going to start. This process is configured to start off with an inspection of the van. So we're going to just have the gate agent confirm that that van in front of them is clean. If they didn't do that, then they would get a pop-up message that's going to alert them to do so before continuing. Next, so we'll see that we can process that inspection now. And then once we have that inspection taken care of, we can process the next action, which is a movement task. And that site entry will prompt the system to know now the current location of that vehicle. So you see that we've indicated that this vehicle is at the site entry point of the yard. So next, when we go to load, we'll see here an example of some of the validations that the system is going to enforce. So we get this pop-up message when we try to process the load because there's no actual quantity on any of our products. So in this case, we are expecting to load this van with a couple different pallets of fertilizer. And we can see that when we look at the details for that van, we have no actual quantity yet. So we need to adjust that. And ideally, any quantity information could come over automatically from hardware on site. So whether it be a scale commonly used in bulk products or a warehouse management system, for example, where through RF, you've scanned a barcode of each item that you've loaded onto the van. These types of things are ideal for integrating with Veyard so that this information doesn't have to be manually plugged in by a user, but of course, there is always that capability. So the other thing that you're going to see here is that we can configure for a given vehicle type certain constraints against a max gross weight. And so each time a product is updated with a certain quantity, which I just did the first one, that current gross weight will update. But then also, if I go ahead and just throw a way too big of a number in for this one, the van's max gross weight is 10 tons. And if I go ahead and say that there's 10 tons of this product, then what we should expect to see is that the system kicks back an error saying, hey, you're out of compliance with what's set as the max gross weight for this vehicle. So what we can see here is that that gross weight is in excess of that max gross weight. And then the next action, if it were to be attempted to be processed or completed, would prompt the system to alert you of that non-compliance. So load goes through, boom, pop-up message indicating that we are not in compliance with what is supposed to be the max gross weight of this vehicle type, which of course, every different vehicle type can have a different max gross weight. Of course, a van would have a different amount than a standard semi-truck trailer. So again, through automation, ideally, this validation would never have to come up because ideally, you're not putting more than is even possible into the vehicle. And if you have automated systems in place capturing those quantities of what's loaded, then ideally you'd never encounter this, but regardless of whether that integration is there or not, the system would prompt that validation. Additionally, we can see that seal information can be captured. So we're going to capture what the seal is, who did it, what time, and then this information can be transferred to whether it be forms like the bill of lading or back to upstream systems so that that information can flow all the way through if it's considered relevant. So we see the validation is accepted this time around. And then our next step would be the printing of those documents. So WeYard is capable of supporting forms. And so I have an example of a bill of lading document that you'll see in just a second here. I'm just kind of giving you a second to see some of this quantity information, because what you'll see on the bill of lading is that the quantity information will come over. So you should see in our just example bill of lading, both the planned quantities that came over from ECC, as well as the actual quantities that we put in there. So when we click print, it's just going to pop up a new window displaying the PDF form of our example bill of lading. And of course, we could adopt whatever your template is, so and then map all the right fields to the right places, and then ideally eliminate the need for any handwritten information to be put into a bill of lading document as an example, or any of your forms. Additionally, we can attach this document along with other attachments, like say pictures, if you were to have taken any pictures during an inspection, which could have been relevant. And then by attaching them, it makes them available for download at any point in the future. So at this point, this trailer is set for departure. So the loading has been processed. We've printed the documents. All this driver has to do now is return back to that entry exit point of the yard where the gate agent can take back over and proceed with the final steps in order to check that this trailer is ready for departure. So, and then actually process that departure. So again, we're seeing that we can process these actions for a given visit from both this overview screen that you're seeing here, as well as from the detailed screen when you select a visit and click next in that bottom right. So now that the last action is completed, the status of this visit will change from an active visit to a completed visit. And then the processing status would also indicate our custom processing status of departed. So if we go ahead and change our filters here to look for this particular completed visit instead of planned and active visits, click into it, you'll see we still have that bill of lading available to download at any point in time, along with all the other information. And then you can see at the top right that processing status was changed to completed and departed. So finally, that tile represented kind of all of the execution actions. Now we have 3 other tiles for monitoring visits, products, and actions that can give us not only reporting functionalities, but kind of real-time monitoring functionalities, because we can monitor anything, a planned visit, which is set to happen in the future. We can monitor an active visit that's happening currently, or monitor a completed visit that's happened already, which is what you're seeing here. And you basically just, you can set up your query for whatever particular use case you have. If you have a reporting query versus a, hey, I want to see what's happening right here, right now. And then if in that overview screen, there was additional information that you wanted to see, you can always click into a given row and see the full details of it. So this next one is just monitor actions. So it's just a little bit more granular. The visit is kind of that top level hierarchy, and then actions are what happen on a visit. And so this can be useful for monitoring. For example, you can easily set up a view from this screen to see like what dock doors, for example, within your yard are currently available, and you can do that all from the overview screen. Actions are also useful if you wanted to look into the details of a completed action to see information like when did it happen, who did it, what additional information could be relevant to that. So again, emphasizing some of that. In this case, we're looking at monitor products. So if you wanted to have again, an overview screen that looks at all the products of a given day, you could do that. Or again, wanted to look at one particular delivery number or shipment or freight order number, a given reference, you can search for that and then see all the details in regards to what quantity was loaded onto that that vehicle for that given reference number, if there was any discrepancy between planned versus actual quantities that you wanted to look into. So robust reporting and monitoring capabilities as well. With that, I'll hand it back over to you, Michael.
All right. Thank you so much, Patrick, for your demo. And I think that we have definitely seen that the way WeArt is working and the way WeArt is being designed, it's really intended to work for yards that don't necessarily require the end stage and end level of process automation. So it's more about digitizing the process, having a possibility to seeing what's happening in the yard, and based on there, introduce in the future more and more capabilities and also more process automation. So really the intent of WeArt is, as you've seen, a small, nice, lean tool that manages especially distribution and manufacturing warehouse yards, in order to help customers with that. So we want to wrap up this webinar with basically the key question of how do we get there? Yeah. So how do we get? How do you as a customer of Westernacher potentially get to WeArt? What does a typical implementation look like, and how can we help you here? So similar to what I've talked about, the good night's sleep that we had in the beginning, and that is able to help you just being a little bit more clear and having more clarity throughout the day. Same applies here to WeArt, and the idea is that this shouldn't take a lot of time, right? So we are not talking about implementation cycles and implementation timelines that now require half a year or a year of implementation. We are talking about a 12-week implementation, so 3 months basically, in order to set up WeArt for one location. In order to first of all digitize the process. So basically what you have seen by Patrick in the demo, setting this up for the different process variants. We obviously have typically some sort of process variances. We have live load operations, live unload operations. We have trailers that are being dropped and hooked into the yard. We might have some other arrivals into the yard that we need to take care of. Potentially, there are also rail processes that we need to look into if we have 1 or 2 tracks that go into the yard where we load rail cars. So basically, setting up that process in WeArt is the intention here, covering all the core components that we have also talked about. So planning, gate operation, and execution, and essentially replacing existing manual and paper-based processes and workflows to digitize, and then also in the future to being able to automate these processes and establish and introduce a digital information flow across all the stakeholders that are being involved. As we've also discussed, it seamlessly integrates into SAP and into the SAP landscape. So whether you have EWM, whether you have TM, whether you're still on ECC, whether you have already S4, and the way this works basically is that WeArt is being installed on top of that SAP landscape and then integrates into these SAP modules in order to then also build the bridge between transportation on the one side and warehousing production processes on the other side. And as we said, I think 12 weeks is a pretty good timeline in order for a project to set this up for one location. The 12 weeks is not only the configuration and everything. The 12 weeks really is from kicking off the project until completing hypercare, and includes all the process discovery workshops, the design around that, the setup of the system, the installation, later on the integration and user testing, and also hypercare. So that's all included in the 12 months for one site. So this is a single site deployment. But of course, after that, you can take WeArt and then start rolling it out into other locations, which then doesn't take too much time from there as well. We also, so this is basically our starter package. We also do implementations a little bit more custom driven. So some of our customers that implement WeArt also have their custom or we also do custom extensions and custom development on top of that. In these cases, obviously 12 weeks is not enough. Then we are talking typically about 15 to 20 weeks, depending on the complexity of the developments that are being done. We do have a customer where we are, for example, integrating all the hardware that is existing in the site, the scales, the barriers. In that case, obviously, we are then more looking towards a 4 to 5 month implementation period. All right, so that's basically how you can implement WeArt, and how long it takes in order to get your yard doing a little bit more for you and wake it up. So with that, thanks to everyone that has been attending this webinar. I've seen that we do have a couple of questions that I want to quickly go through with you guys. So and Pat, I would start with the first question and actually ask that question to you, which is basically how does WeArt handle unexpected events or disruptions in the yard? So basically, what's the exception handling cases in WeArt?
Yeah. So first off, there's always the capability to have user interaction, even in scenarios that are supposed to kind of be somewhat automated, where they can intervene directly with kind of exceptions. So you can do exactly that, essentially have exceptions that a user can plug into the process in order to kind of divert either into kind of an exception routine or get you back into the path that you were expecting to go. So very seamless ways that WeArt incorporates kind of that status engine allow us to prompt additional actions. Like, for example, if you wanted to cancel the visit, and anytime you cancel a visit, you want to trigger upstream to be notified of that cancellation, that's easily done. And then the user interface is flexible to allow you to make changes at key parts in the process. So we work with you to figure out, okay, for example, does a live load ever turn into a drop and hook, or does a vehicle type ever change? And if so, then we can set up the process to allow you to change those types of things.
All right, perfect. Another question that was asked by the audience is how can WeArt help in preparing for or adapting future supply chain trends? I think that's a great question, because at least over the last 4 to 5 years, supply chains in general have been extremely under stress with everything that has happened. Yeah, whether it was COVID with the pandemic a couple of years ago, whether it was things like the vessel crashing into the bridge in the port of Baltimore, whether it's the geopolitical situation right now with certain trading lanes and trading routes being constantly closed and opened, and a lot of uncertainty. I think from that macro level, it is very important to look more on a lower level to make sure that the supply chain in general is being set up in a robust and resilient way. You can only do that if you have all parts of the supply chain being covered in some sort of process. So that applies not only for yard management, that obviously applies for everything that is supply chain related, and especially supply chain execution related, whether it's the planning from a transportation side, planning freight in advance, whether it's from a warehousing and production perspective, making sure that we don't operate ad hoc, but that we also that processes are in place that can also sustain a certain level of resilience. It's the same in the yard as well. Yeah, and I think and we've also seen this with our customers. Customers that do have their entire supply chain being covered by systems, by processes, are much better to react to any peaks. For example, if we talk about seasonality, if we see that we have to ship more volume in the next coming weeks, just being prepared for that and having the process being set up and being in place helps tremendously in order to cover that, basically. Another question that I would like to pick up here, and Pat, I would actually also ask you that question because it ties into the previous one, is what's the biggest potential for innovation in yard management in the next foreseeable future? So from your perspective, what do you think are the biggest drivers in the next coming years?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of potential, and obviously I'd be remiss not to mention the buzz around AI and its potential for integration into business systems. But I think that a prerequisite to that really is bringing your operations throughout your supply chain execution into the digital world first and providing that framework. I don't think that in the next 3 to 5 years, business that's looking at trying to have some type of either AI co-pilot or even something more involved than that, even considering just using imagination with where the next 3 to 5 years might take us, it's going to be harder for a business that hasn't already gone through digitization of their processes to implement any type of tool or innovation like that may be available in the next 3 to 5 years. So I think bringing yourself into that digital world is going to really help with any innovators that become available, especially within kind of the AI technology space in the next 3 to 5 years. Beyond that, I think that we're seeing more opportunities with cost of hardware and sensor technology that could be incorporated into yard operations in order to help automate some activities within your yard beyond just things like scaling, but presence detection of vehicles in certain locations, that type of thing is going to be much more approachable. The barriers to entry, I think, are going to come down over the next 3 to 5 years, and having a framework for your yard management system to tie into other IoT stuff is really gonna help be an innovator within yard management technology.
Yep. I completely agree. And as you've said, just to add here one thing, AI is obviously front and center in any discussion right now. It's very hard to introduce AI if you're still operating based out of a piece of paper, if you're operating based out of an Excel sheet, or any outdated system that is 20 or 30 years old. That is typically something that you will not be able to leverage latest technology and innovation from. So, which is why it's very important to keep up with the pace that's out there in order to being able to also then leverage all of these innovations. Last question, what are the prerequisites to implement WeArt? Very easy, you need to have SAP. So we need an SAP landscape, whether it's ECC6 still that you're on, whether it's S4, there doesn't matter whether it's an older instance of S4 or whether it's already a little bit newer. Any TM or EWM system is basically what we need in order to basically get you on WeArt and get you started. As I've said, the current version of WeArt works as an add-on into the existing SAP landscape of yours. So it's an add-on, it's an installation on top of your SAP landscape. Towards the end of this year, we are also going to publish and release a public cloud software as a service version of WeArt, where you basically don't need to install or host WeArt at all. You basically just get a link with an access to your processes, and the hosting and everything is being handled as a true software as a service offering in the public cloud, which means basically that we will be taking care of that. Big advantage there obviously is that number one, less cost from a TCO perspective. But number two, also, you will be able to leverage latest and greatest innovation and in the future. And as I've said, that's going to come towards the end of this year. All right. That's all the questions we had in the chat. So with that, Pat, thank you so much for your time in the demo. To everyone that has been attending, thank you so much for your time spending and listening into WeArt. Our contact details have been now on the screen for quite some time. So if you have any further questions, if you want to get in contact with us, feel free to reach out. We are always happy to show you WeArt a little bit more in depth from what you have seen today. Also answer some of your specific questions around your specific processes. Come outside to basically show you how WeArt can work in your environment. And with that, thank you so much and have a nice remaining day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.